This episode of Between the Highs podcast is brought to you by Ridgeway Roofing Company. Roofing done the right way.
Welcome to Between the Highs, life behind the logo. This isn't a podcast about overnight success. It's about the long road that came before it. Here we sit down with small business owners from our community and talk about the parts of life you don't see on social media. The childhoods, the setbacks, the detours, the seasons that shaped who they became long before they ever built a brand. We start at the beginning, where they grew up, what home felt like, who they were in school, and what their 20s really looked like when no one had it figured out. We talk about the hardships that changed them, the lessons that stayed, the things they wish they could go back and tell their younger selves. We talk about business, how they started, what they struggled through, and what success actually costs when you're building something of your own. Because most of life doesn't happen at the peaks. It happens in between. That's where the real stories live. Between the highs. Life before the logo.
So my name's Richard Appleton. I'm the owner, or my wife and I, Deanna Appleton, are the owners and caretakers of this here Strathy Hall Plantation House. Originally built 1756 by Captain James Mackay, who served alongside George Washington in the Spanish-French War.
Today we have Mr. Richard Appleton with us. I met Richard back in August after he had a massive magnolia tree fall onto the side of his several hundred-year-old house. And through that, we developed a friendship. And as we were looking to find who would be the best candidate to start this podcast, I've always enjoyed listening to your perspective. Whenever we talk, you say things that I don't expect someone to say because you're authentic, and it's honestly it's your authenticity that makes me want to hear more of what you have to say and hear how you came to see the world the way that you do. So I'll kind of let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Richard Appleton. Born in a small town on the eastern side of Zimbabwe, 1982. Little town called Mutari. Lived there till I was about 7 years old. We had a very wealthy family back at home. My grandfather was an immigrant from England into what was Rhodesia back then. Zimbabwe got their independence in 1980, and shortly after their independence, my parents realized that the interim government, the new government that's come in, is probably not what's best for the country. So at about 5 to 7 years old, if I remember correctly, I must have been about 5 years old. My parents uprooted and moved down to South Africa. And we left Zimbabwe behind. Moved to South Africa as a very wealthy family back then. And South Africa then, shortly after that, started going through their changes from, pre-apartheid to post-apartheid. The ANC came into power with Nelson Mandela. And from there, all foreign investment got afraid and the economies crashed again in South Africa. So one of the dynamics that I learned from a very young age is I learned that you can have it all 1 minute and have nothing the next. And that was from probably about 12 years old onwards. We were a very poor family in Africa. But as a youngster, it's kind of the reverse way most people experience it. Normally you would come from a troubled upbringing into a wealthy life. I came from a wealthy life into a very poor life.
What was your first realization of things are different?
I think so. We had a big 5-bedroom house with like a tennis court and a 3-acre garden and everything else like that when I was maybe 7 years old. And at that age, you don't really see the inner workings of what happens at home. You're too young to really understand. So I didn't realize that there was really financial trouble going on with my family until we ended up in this little rented house, and me and my brother were sharing a metal spring bed, with a little heater in between us, and that was it. And we went from all of that to, and I thought, oh, something's changed, But I'm happy it happened to me when I was younger. I think it was easier for me than it was for my older brother and sister. They were in their teenage years. But that was probably one of the easier parts in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Who were the adults that were around you most?
But when I was really young, it was mostly mom. Dad was working a hell of a lot. But at the age of 12, I was off to boarding school. So from boarding school onwards, I very rarely saw my parents.
How long were you in boarding school?
Until I left home, basically.
Okay.
So I started boarding school age 12. And pretty much from the offset of boarding school, as terrible as it sounds, they send you away to get you away. My parents did it for the better of me, but the way the system worked over there was kind of cruel in a way. You're 12 years old, they drop you off at school and they say goodbye. And for the first 3 months, you're not allowed any communication with the outside world. You're not allowed to leave the school premises. Your first year at that school, they just wanted to break you. You weren't allowed to stand on grass. You weren't allowed to eat your sandwiches together. You had to separate, like just small, petty things just to break your character and destroy you. But when you're 12 years old and they break you down, you're normally looking for your parents to help put you back together, and there's nobody. So that was probably one of the hardest parts of my younger years is that 12-year age.
I had a very similar experience. That's
yeah, and the screw up with it all is I agree, it's that whole military logic of break them so that you can build them into who you want them to be. But the problem is they broke me and a lot of my friends, and there's nothing in place to rebuild us. So we were taken away from home. We were told that we're nothing. We were told that, this is our world and this is what we're living in it. But the whole time through, it was like, well, what now?
yeah.
Who do I need to be now? Because obviously everything's changed.
When do you remember catching your first gear, like seeing your first glimpse of light after being broken?
Oh, probably about 16, 17. I ended up leaving the boarding establishment at 16, I believe. And I moved in with one of my best friends into his house. And my parents then just paid room and board at his house. And it was then when I moved in with, his name is Quentin. When I moved in with Quentin, I got that kind of breath of fresh air. And I was like, okay, it doesn't all suck.
Yeah, right.
And
here's a little hope.
Yeah. And it's always, you start to realize that you, like even now, as much as I had now, I mean, even if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would still value the small things way more than the big.
Yeah.
And I think it's when you've been down in that kind of trotted down position, it's just, a lollipop always tastes better if you haven't ever had one.
It doesn't have to be a $10 million check. It can
No.
be something just so subtle.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the simple things, you know.
So what happens next? You moved in.
So yeah, I moved in with Quentin, and it was about that time when I was about 17. Um, Dad had got a job in a country called Tanzania, in a city called Dar es Salaam, just kind of up on the equator, just south of Kenya. So Dad had moved up to Dar es Salaam to go and get set up there. Mom and my younger brother had sold up everything that they had in South Africa, and they were moving to Tanzania too. So when I had finished high school, I had nothing. My family was by this time in Tanzania, and I was in a country where I was on a student visa. And by the time I turned 18, that visa expired. So fortunately, because I was born in Zimbabwe, we had British passports because it was a British colony. So I got an air ticket. A funny story, actually. So when my grandfather passed away, he left in his will a certain amount of money for each of his grandkids. But we were only allowed to take that money out when we turned 18 because it was for college fund. And it was a large sum of money, you know, because, I mean, the Rhodesian dollar used to be equal to the US dollar. So back then, that was dollars that was in the account. So, you know, my sister's inheritance, I think she inherited, I don't know off the top of my head, like $18,000 US dollars, the equivalent to. And the way the inflation worked, by the time I turned 18, I could barely afford an air ticket out of the country. And my younger brother, who's 4 years younger than me, I don't even think he ever took the money out because he couldn't even buy a lollipop with it.
Wow.
That's how quick the currency just dropped.
Right.
So with that money, I bought an air ticket to England at the age of 18. And I found a job in a hotel. I won't say the hotel's name because I'm going to trash talk them. But they're a hotel out in Kent on the east coast of England. And they promised me full room and board. You know, they're paying me peanuts. I think it was like £1.90 an hour. So I got a train ticket out there, got to the hotel. But by the time I got to the hotel, I was out of money. Like, that's it, Rich. You've gotten here, you've got the job, but you don't have anything but an empty wallet. And they showed me across the street an empty house, which looked like it was just a homeless shelter. And they said, that's where you're living. And you're cleaning dishes. And you start tomorrow morning. And I went over to this house, and it was like cold, shitty-ass day. And inside the downstairs of this house was maybe 15 beds downstairs. And it was all everybody from, you know, the toilet cleaners, the dishwashers, the maids, but they were all like Romanian, Polish, Ukrainian. None of them spoke English, and there was just me, this little skinny white African kid. And I rolled up there, and I found a bed, and I lay down in it, and this big Ukrainian dude with his head was like square block. He came and lay next to me and kind of just shook my hand and winked at me and went to sleep because he couldn't speak English. And that night I realized, oh, you know, you're on your own, bud. There's nobody here to save you.
Yeah.
Like there's not even a cell phone. There's not a call box. If there was a call box, I didn't have money to put in it. So I went to work the next day and realized we're eating the leftovers from the restaurant. And it was me as the dishwasher who knew that because I was told to scrape all the uneaten stuff aside into the pot. So for 6 months, I pushed through that, made enough money to get a cell phone. And once I got a cell phone, I found a job in London at a health and fitness center, making milkshakes. went on into London, and I was paying, I think it was like £400 a month to sleep on a couch. And
What does that translate into dollars?
right now it's not far off the same, but back then it was about $2 to the pound.
Yeah.
So it was probably about $800. But when you're earning pounds, it kind of makes it not as bad. So yeah, I slept on that couch that I paid rent on for about 6 months or so, and then one of my buddies was working out in a place called Essex. Town was Chelmsford, Essex. He called me up and said, "Hey, he's working out on a farm out there, and it pays pretty good. Come check it out." It's like, cool, man. So I got the train out there. Everything out there is trains, Not many people own cars. Got the train out there, and I met him, and then I met the farm owner and stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, come work for us, and we'll give you a room, we'll give you a house." So I shared a 2-bedroom house with Matthew, good friend of mine, and we worked on the farm for about a year and a half. I started in the pigsties, and if you've ever complained about somebody's fart stinking, you have never shoveled
Pigs are terrible.
pigsties that have a layer of ice over the top in winter. You go in there in the morning and you crack that top layer of ice, and it steams, and that steam literally sticks to you. Like your whole body gets wet with steam because it's so cold, but the steam is,
Right.
and it is literally just, you are dripping with pig shit. And I used to go to the grocery store after work, and I would shower 3-4 times, and people would still walk past me and think,
Yeah. So where are you at mentally right now? Are you, I'm working into my next position, I'm just trying to survive? Like what's your driving force at the moment?
I think my perspective on life has changed considerably over the last few years, and I think it's to be expected. And a lot of middle-aged people, you hear the term midlife crisis, and you hear people in their mid-40s or early 40s suddenly just dropping everything and leaving, and that kind of thing. You get to my age, and you do look at life differently because your perspective changes. When you're young, it's all the mindset of I want, and I've got to work, and I've got to do this, and I've got to. For me, I had to do that because if I didn't, I was begging for money, and the better I did, the better I forced myself to do, and then the better I forced myself to do, and more and more and more. And living down in Florida before I moved up here, I was a co-founder and CEO of a interior carpentry company. And this was at 24 years old. I had 380 employees.
Right. And now what age were you at working on the farm?
On the farm, I was 20.
20. Okay. And so at that point, I'm just like, just keep moving. Just whatever life puts at you that day, you wake up and just.
I was biding time. I was trying to find where I wanted to be. I was trying to find where I would work, where it would fit in for me, and I've always been a very patient person, and I would always recommend to everybody in life, if you make a decision now and you haven't thought about it for a little while, you're going to be very lucky if that decision works out as planned. Always be patient with your decisions, but be quick and efficient on your decision making. And the older you get, the more you can predict the decisions you're going to have to make in the future. But when you're younger, you kind of make just decisions off the hip that 9 times out of 10, you don't have the experience to know whether it's a good or bad decision. Give that decision time. So I wasn't making any life decisions. I wasn't saying this is where I'm going to live and I was just waiting for that sort of moment where, and I flew to, we had made some money working driving combine harvesters. When you drive the combines in the summer in London, in England, you make really good money. You're working 18-hour days, and 8 of them are regular time. The rest is overtime. So you're really banking money. Well, as an 18-year-old, you're banking money. So I made enough money that I was going to fly here to America and meet a good friend of mine, Quentin, the one that I was saying I was boarding with.
Right.
And we were going to buy a camper van here in Florida. Well, not here in Florida, but America, Florida. And we were going to drive up the West Coast, across Canada, and then down the East Coast, and then dump the camper and boogie it, And I got to Fort Lauderdale, and I was sitting there waiting. I had a return ticket back to England for 3 months. So I was on a 3-month holiday visa. And Quentin got denied entry. I don't know why he got denied entry. He's on a South African passport. I think it was because he was coming in for 3 months, but he didn't have enough money to show that he could survive for 3 months on the financials he had, something to that. So then I was sitting here going, oh, man, I've got a return ticket in 3 months' time. Quentin's got the can, what am I going to do? So I was staying in this crew house called Floyd's, and
And what part of Florida are you in again?
Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, okay. Fort Lauderdale. And this guy came across, and we were at Stuart. So Quentin's uncle was in Fort Lauderdale, and Quentin said to me, "Go down, check my uncle out, and maybe he can help you out with some side jobs until I can get back into the country." So I went down, got with Stuart, and we were doing, like little bits and pieces. And I ended up just thinking to myself, man, I don't want to go back to England. I kind of found where I wanted to be, but I was here on a holiday visa. And I got talking to a very good friend of Stuart, Quentin's uncle. And he was the owner of a high-rise construction company. And he said to me, Rich, I tell you what, come work for me and I'll do all your legalities. I'll sponsor you into the country. I'll do all your, it was an H-2B visa I was on. And I thought, that's it, man. We're good. And I had to go back to England for the visa to process, because you can't apply for the visa inside the America.
While you're here, right?
Yeah.
You have to go back and apply.
So I had to go back to the UK, apply for the visa once the visa was approved. So anyway, I got to the UK, and I'm waiting. Call back to America, no answer. I'm like, well, what's going on here? No answer. A month later, no answer. And now I'm run out of money in the UK. I'm sitting here waiting, for these promises. And a good friend of mine called me up who was working for the same company. I didn't know him all that well at that time. I know him so well now. I bought the house next door that he lives in.
Nice.
Yeah. He's godfather to my son now, and he's the reason why I'm here in America today. I called him up and said to him, do you know anything about what's happening with my paperwork? And he said, well, Chris, who was the the owner of the company. He said, Chris flew up to Alaska and bought a BMW, and he's riding to Patagonia right now. I was like, but I just came to England under the promise that,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. That's not what you're expecting to
no,
hear.
no. So I ended up, mixing concrete in the snow and doing everything I could just to make money. And Brian then went and got his own lawyer, hired his own lawyer, and then got me into the country legally through his own lawyer, sponsored through the company. So when I rolled back in, it was, Brian's the reason why I'm here. And then when I got back in, started working with that company.
And so how old are you at this point? So you're in the country.
I would have been 27 by then.
Okay.
Yeah. Started working for this construction company, and they were on the safety side of things, doing high-rise construction, netting and that sort of thing. And one of the project managers for the developer cornered me the one day and said to me, Rich, what do you know about doors? I said, I know they're open and close. I can shovel pig shit, but I don't really know much about doors. And he said to me, I'll tell you what, if you can figure out how to install the door, and you can come and confidently tell me you can install the door, he said, you and I need to talk. So I said, okay. And his name was John Deutschman. John Deutschman and John Leet were the two head guys for this company, this high-rise construction company. So I figured it out, and I was like, yeah, it's not rocket science, man. Went back to him and I said, yeah, John, I can install you a door, no worries at all. So he said, all right, go get with Chris, who was the owner of the company I was working for. He said, let Chris know that you've got an idea. You're going to start a company up, and your first contract is 18,000 doors of Brickell Icon Tower 1. I was like, oh, shit.
Here we go.
Yeah. And that was pretty much my break into, all right, Rich, so were you asking where was that initial light to say, okay, this is where you want to be, this is where it's going to work for you, and this is how it's going to work out.
I'm finally catching traction.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Right. This looks good. It feels good.
Yeah. And from there, there's, as I say, what I do now is I do service and maintenance work on super yachts. Nothing to do with high-rise construction. But it gave me that breakthrough that I was mentally prepared for. I just needed that. Yeah. I just needed that opportunity. And I'm glad I waited for that opportunity instead of finding an opportunity, because chances are when you find an opportunity, it's not meant to be there for you to find. I'm a strong believer that there's somebody out there that puts fruit in front of you. And sometimes it's not good fruit, sometimes it's good fruit, but it's there for a reason. And to walk past an opportunity because it looks like a challenge, or it looks like something you're not interested in, it's been put in front of you for a reason. Take it.
Take it.
Take it. It's not there by accident. None of us are here by accident. And opportunities, relationships, all of that, I believe is put there in front of you.
Intentionally, yeah.
Same as hardships.
Right.
And that's, to me, hardships are a lot more enjoyable if you look at it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Yeah, we share, even though we have extremely different backgrounds, I feel like we're a lot of times when I hear you speak, I can relate, and I can hear some relatability. It's, like I went through the boarding school being broken down, and, you almost get to a point where, for me, I don't want to say it was enjoyable. It was never enjoyable, but I could smile in the face of adversity where, I've had people like, that have talked to me since I've started my company.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, a lot of times finances come up, right? Like, you've made it, you're doing good. Like, I knew how to be poor. Like, I was really good at being poor. then you start making money, and then that's when, that's when I really remember the first time being scared was
Yeah.
when money started to come, because it was a completely different. These were problems that I had no idea.
Money tends to bring just as many problems as it does enjoyments. And I see that a lot working for, these billionaires I work for. It's and your question originally was, where am I today mentally? It's where I was saying it's not quite a midlife crisis. It's a point of reflection in life, where now I'm starting to look back at what I've been through to get where I am. And now I'm acknowledging where I am and saying, all right, Rich, you've made it to this point and you're doing okay. Do you really need to go any further, or should you just step back a bit and enjoy where you are? And I'm happier now than I've been in the last 20 years of my life, because I'm able to be content in where I am, where I know I'm not afraid to go backwards. And I don't really have any drive to become a billionaire, because I've worked for billionaires for 10 years now. And I've realized that's not where it lies. Where happiness truly lies is to be content, to be comfortable, to be happy where you are with what you've got, where you don't want any more and you don't want any less, but you're not afraid of either or, but you just.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of that comes from, we think it's going to look different as we climb up the scale financially, right? But then you get to the next step. Like I remember there being a time where it's like, when I have $10,000,
Yeah.
man, I'm good. Like if I can just get $10,000 in the bank, and then it was 100,000, and then it just. Then I talked to a friend, he's sold his business. He's done really well, and he's got multi-millions of dollars in the bank. And I asked him, like, man, so does it feel different? And he's, no, it's the same.
I think as an entrepreneur, I think the most valuable part of being an entrepreneur and a business owner isn't the success of finance. It's the success of your self-pride, your confidence, your standing in community. It's all of the things that have no financial value to, that actually becomes the most valuable thing to you.
Yeah.
And I think it's also what's most valuable to your company is who your company is, not what they're worth. I've always said, to my clients, this job between me and you is not about dollars and cents. It's about, you need this done. I can do it for you. And I want to maintain a good relationship with you that says, I need you as much as you need me. And we enjoy each other's company. And that's how we live through life. The money will come later.
Byproduct, right?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And it does come because it has to, because that's how you survive. But it's not the fundamental reason why we do this.
Yeah, there's never been a moment. We've had some great years. We've had some years that had a little more struggle than others, but there's never been a moment that has made me feel better than one of my first hires, who is now our general manager, my partner, when he bought his first house. Like,
yeah,
when me and him were going around and looking at houses together, and it's that feeling. I don't think there's a contract that I could have signed that would regenerate that emotion of, you help somebody get to where they wanted to be. And now I've got one of my the next hire after that. They're looking at buying their first house this year. And I mean, to me, that is just that. There is no greater feeling. I mean, that is just, that's where it's at.
No,
When-
it is. And as I say, it's not the stuff money can buy that you get enjoyment out of later on in life. When you're young, yeah, it's all about the cars and the bikes, and later on in life, you're like, I'm good with this old banged up truck, man. I'm good with it.
Yeah, right.
Between the Highs podcast is produced inside Story Oak Studios, storyoakstudios.com.